Look at all these smiling faces. There are so many fun things that this guestbook app brings, but man, is it decaying. It needs some severe help. It is in need of updates. It's running on an old version of Next.js. There's packages in it that are, I think, deprecated, certainly unmaintained, and this needs a little bit of love. And I thought, what better time to try to migrate this to a new tech stack? And in particular, I am thinking about Laravel. And in this video, we are going to be migrating a Next.js application over to Laravel. We're going to cover everything from getting pages incorporated to server-side rendering to how does the front end talk to the back end and everything in between. And the truth is, I don't know the answer. I am not very experienced with Laravel, but I have lots of programming experience, and I'm sure we can figure this out together. So in this video, we're going to have basically a beginner's look at moving a media-heavy application over from Next.js to Laravel. So let's get going. So here's the application, first of all. It is a video guestbook. And the way that this is supposed to work is that it connects to a machine's camera or maybe your phone camera and allows you to access your camera right within the application. When you click on this red button over here, we should get a countdown that is going to record a little video. So let's just click on it and show you how it works. 2, 3, 2, we have a little animation there. I'm waving, thumbs up, and there goes my video entry. So we have confetti that falls down. And if everything goes, I don't even know if this works, frankly. Is it still working? Okay, yeah, we got upload processes in place. It's 100%. And look at this nice little printing effect there. I'm waving. Cool, it works. It still works. This was introduced by my buddy Darius over here at Mux. And this whole process is using Next.js. It's using the Mux APIs to transcode this video and deliver it and store all of these sort of video guestbook entries in place. So what you can do then is scan this QR code with your phone or click to take your video with you, and you get your own little page, which is fun. You can download this video, you get a nice little Mux promo here, and tweet it out, share it, and so on. So pretty simple app, self-contained, but a couple different pages in here. There's obviously some async processing happening behind the scenes, and we are going to talk through how this whole thing works, but also what it's going to need to change to get working within the Laravel ecosystem. So I have Ghosty installed that I'm using in my terminal, and we'll just take a look. We'll get over to the code directory. We have a Mux directory here, cd Mux, and the Mux guestbook, Mux guestbook. And honestly, I can't even get this app to run locally. It's so outdated. If we take a look at the package JSON file, there are some dependencies here where React 18 is introduced in this code base, but then this is an outdated dependency that we need to update that I think relies on React 17. Certainly these reach packages, these aren't even maintained right now, and those rely on React 17. So I'm honestly not sure how this is working right now. But it is, and this is the kind of the reality of these older code bases. You have to maintain them or else they're ready to decay and kind of experience that bit rot. And we're going to try to combat that here today. But let's get started. We have the Laravel website looking nice and clean. I'm going to go to documentation and just follow their installation instructions. Let's see what we run into. This is a relatively new, clean machine at M4. It doesn't have much installed on it at all. So before creating your Laravel application, make sure your local machine has PHP, Composer, and the Laravel installer. I don't have any of those. I do have Node installed, so we can compile the application's front-end assets. If you don't have PHP and Composer installed, then run this command. So I'm just going to copy this, trust them that their documentation is in good shape, paste it right in here, and see what happens. Okay, really wasn't that long, actually. We have the Laravel installer, Composer binary, everything's been installed successfully. Please restart your terminal or run this to update your path. So I'll just copy that, paste it here, and I think we're installed. Let's just see if I run the Laravel command, Laravel. Great. That looks like it's ready to rock to me. So I'm also kind of interested in this right here, these starter kits, where I have an idea of the tech stack that I want to use here. I really enjoy working with React. This current code base is in React. And I think that maybe here's a good place to get a head start. So I'm going to click on the starter kits area. React starter kit provides a robust modern starting point for Laravel applications with a React front end using Inertia, which I don't know much about Inertia, but we will figure that out in this video. It uses React 19, TypeScript, Tailwind, and Shadcn UI component library. This is what I want. How do I do it? Okay, I scroll back up here. We are under the creating an application using a starter kit section here, and it says, let's create a new app. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Let's get out of this directory. We're just going to create a new application here, and let's call it, we're going to go Laravel, new, Mux, guestbook, PHP. Sure. Oh, look, and it asks us right away, what is the starter kit we want to use? So that's perfect. I'm going to hit React, hit enter. Do we need any authentication? We don't actually need authentication for this app, but I'll just choose Laravel's built-in. Do we want test? What test? We'll use pests, and then let's see if we can get up and running just by running this command here. It's asking me if I would like to run npm install and npm run build. I'll say sure. Cool. And it now says the application is ready in the Mux guestbook PHP directory. And here's how we can begin our local development. So go ahead and run cd to the directory and composer run dev. There we go. And we have a server up and running. I guess it creates a little vanity URL for us. I'll click on that. Well, for some reason, that vanity URL does not work for me. It's bringing up this AT&T page. But if I do the local URL here, this 127.001 port 8000, it looks like it loads up okay here. So I'm going to stick with this for now and just keep on keeping on. We'll see if this brings up any issues here moving forward. Not sure, but that one seemed to work okay for me. And that was just right here in the console. So let's go ahead and crack open this in Cursor. I have a new terminal tab open. I'm just going to type Cursor. This will bring it up in our Cursor editor. And I am going to rely on Cursor to help me kind of make my way through this code base. We have an app folder, which is usually a good indication of where our code is going to have to live. We have a public folder, and look under here, we have resources, JavaScript, pages, and maybe welcome here. And I can't remember if that was at the route, and we're just on a home route here. So if I open up Cursor, go over to our controllers, we have our main controller. I'm just kind of clicking around actually to try to figure out how this is routing to the pages welcome page here. Assuming that this is the actual page that we want to be working on, let's just double check here. So we have some text that says, let's get started. Laravel has an incredibly rich ecosystem. Do we have that text on this page? Let's find out here. Here we go. Let's get started. Laravel has an incredibly rich ecosystem. So let's just change this and say, hello from Cursor. Hello. Actually, the Adele lyric is even better. The other side. Cool. Hello from the other side. So it is updated. It's got hot reload in place, which is nice. This will help our development process. But all of this is just kind of stubbed out code that we don't need any of this. But let's just take a look at what's going on here so far. We have shared data type, which we're going to learn a little bit about. We have a head, link, and use page helper, or some kind of hook from Inertia. And this looks like some maybe SEO or loading assets in the head. And here is some HTML code that we really don't need here. But I am curious, how is the controller handling the request and getting us over to this welcome page? That I don't know the answer to just yet. Let's take a look around and see if we can figure that out. So I'm an app blade. Maybe this is just like the root here is this app. Still feel like something would need to point it to welcome. How do we get to welcome still? Aha, so I searched welcome here and a couple files come up. Obviously, not this first one. This is talking about welcome in the text. Here's the file we're already aware of, but we didn't look at yet are the routes file. There's this web.php routes file here on the side. And rather than routing, like we're used to in Next.js, where we are putting certain files in the correct location to kind of create that route, we are kind of explicitly defining the routes here. So this is saying in this file, when I make a GET request to the root or to the home page, let's go ahead and render the welcome component using Inertia, and we can call it, this is the home page. So this right here is specifying what file is supposed to be rendered on that home route. And I believe if I were to go ahead and change that, I could probably pretty easily demonstrate that this string would actually change to something else. So let's just say dashboard here. And I would imagine that if I save this file, it's going to render this dashboard component instead, which it looks like it did. There's probably some error because that dashboard component, I'm guessing, is you have to have correct authorization to access that. And I don't right now. So I'm just going to undo that. And we're back. Okay, so let's get started with the actual migration of this home page from the guestbook over to Laravel. So I'm going to go back to my original code base here. This is the Mux guestbook. I'm going to open that in Cursor as well. And we have a lot of different things that are happening here, but there's this index page. And this is where we're rendering kind of what we're seeing here. We have this Mux logo at the top, a little comment here. This gear allows us to change what camera is selected, and then all of our existing guestbook entries here at the bottom. So let's make sure we can get this homepage kind of built out in the same way that it currently is. So I'm going to bring up both editors. I have the old guestbook here on the right and the new guestbook on the left. We're going to go to the welcome page. And in fact, I will just go to this welcome page, and anything that we don't actually need here, I'm just going to get rid of. So I think this whole area is going to be a non-starter for what we're trying to do here. Yeah, so let's just go ahead and collapse this here. And I'm just going to completely remove it. So now we should basically have a blank page over here, and we do. Okay, so I want to maybe just start off with the actual HTML here. So we can see that we have this video store, which I believe is some context that is set up in React, which we'll get to at some point in this video. But let's start with the HTML. I'm just going to copy this main element because this is what is first rendering something to the DOM. And I'll bring it over to right underneath the head, which is probably, like I said, doing something similar to what we have in this SEO component. And let's just get this set up here. So we'll simply comment out the confetti, the nav bar, the recorder, the grid. We'll get there. I don't even have formatting set up. That's how new this computer is. We'll format document. And now this shouldn't really have done anything, but let's go ahead and take a look at the browser. Yeah, we don't have any updates just yet. So the easiest thing that we can get built into this application right now is this nav bar. So what I want to do is create a new component for this nav bar. So I'm going to say a new directory inside of components, we'll call it guestbook. And we'll call this one the R. Looks like I'll follow their convention here, lowercase nav bar TSX. Okay. So let's go back over to our old application, and we can see that the nav bar is found here under the components directory, right? And this is kind of a complicated file. So let's dig in, try to figure out what that all looks like right now. There's a settings dialog. So we have this settings dialog. I'll create a component for that. Settings dialog. There's a Mux SVG, which I don't think we need a component for this one. So I'm just going to copy this SVG and then I'll replace it here. And then for the class name, I'll just remove that. Okay, so we don't need that component anymore. We'll just put that right in line. Get rid of that. Update the import up here. And then we have a constants event. So do we have a constants area in this? Doesn't look like it. So I'll go ahead and create a constants directory, just like we have over here. And we have this event. And in this application, an event is kind of where we want to deploy this guestbook. You can see kind of our history with this guestbook. We've used it at conferences over the years where we can basically have this guestbook set up in person and people can interact with it. They can hit a big button and it would start recording their little 3-second guestbook entry. I'll go ahead and save this particular layout here and we'll import. And it looks like we can even use this @sign to kind of use it as an alias for the root of our project. And we have settings dialog. It says it's not a module. We don't have anything in there right now. And this might be one where we need to kind of do some rewriting because this particular dialog is using this reach library, which it seems like it's not maintained right now, which is not ideal. So I'm going to come back to this one. I'm just going to save it here and we'll go over to the navbar, comment out our device selector, and just get something rendering in the meantime. All right, so I'm going to go back over to our welcome screen. And now that we have supposedly a navbar in place, let's find out. I'll put it right in here and see if we can get it rendered. And we'll also make sure to import it. Import navbar, save, go back. And what are we missing here? So I'm looking in the developer console and I'm seeing a couple of errors here. We have can't find variable process, can't access uninitialized variable. So we'll start with that first one. That's in our event TS file. Go back over here, and this looks like probably something to do with our environment variables, right? So I believe because Laravel is using Vite that we're going to need to access this in a different way and define our environment variables in a different way. So let's take a look at the Laravel documentation for environment variable. I'm over here in the docs and I'm just going to search for environment, maybe configuration. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's kind of looking like what we would expect, which is let's just drop a .env file into our project and we should be able to load it up pretty easily. Now, I'm not sure if this is only for the backend at the Laravel side or if Vite is going to be able to access these. I don't know the answer to that yet, but we will find out here soon enough. I'm going off memory here, but I think that in Next.js, we used to have to define these environment variables with this next prefix to make them public. And I am going to move that over here. And I think with Vite, it might be true that you also need to have the Vite prefix so that it's public as well. Let's find out if that's true or not. So I am just going to do 2468 for this ID of this event. If you look down here, 2468 is our developer mode event, so it doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to align with an actual event, right? And then I think what we want to do here with Vite is do an import meta env Vite public event ID. And if I save that, let's see if this error goes away. It did. All right. So what we had to change there that was different from Next.js is instead of using process.env for our import with the next prefix, we do import meta env with the Vite prefix. And it's kind of the same idea. I threw my environment variable here at the bottom. And this particular environment variable is a public environment variable. And I believe that's what this Vite prefix specifies. It indicates that that is going to be public. There are probably some other environment variables here that you don't want to be public, like your database connection. Probably not a great idea. Database password. But we can indicate that this one is going to be public here by adding that prefix. All right, next up, we have, why don't we get those entries showing? We have this grid component with a class name of grow. I don't know entirely what that's doing here, but let's take a look at our old code base. We have components, grid, and some grid code here. It's using a dialog helper, which I fear that we're going to have to refactor that as well. But maybe Laravel has some good components that we can use for that. We're using a video context and some animation here. So there's a little bit going on here that we're going to need to make sure all of this is working. And at some point, I'm going to need to stop deferring, setting up our context and fetching all of the videos that we need to show. Right now, just so we have a better understanding of where these videos are stored in the live application, each of these are a record in a Supabase table, Supabase database. And if we were to take a look at that, if I go to grid, open video, we have this video card component. So here's the video, and it's of type video, which if I were to go to this context, I should be able to see the interface for it. And here we go. So we have each video has an ID, it has a status, a playback ID, which is used to load up the video itself, and then a rotation. Now, I don't know if this was a Next.js thing. We really don't need rotation in the database in any way, so I'm not sure what this is doing, but we'll figure out if we need that or not. All right, if I go to this use video context, I want to see how are we currently fetching all of these videos and setting them into context. So we're here. This is a React context area. And somewhere in here, it looks like we're using set videos. We have remove video, and we're listening to Supabase changes kind of on the fly here. So whenever Supabase has a new entry, we're going to receive some event and then update our state based off of that event that comes in. I'm wondering if there's a way that we can simplify this in Laravel. I don't know the answer to that just yet, but that might be an interesting place to kind of try to pare down what's going on here. We have submit upload callback. And I'm just wondering, when this page loads, oh, here we go. Where does the videos actually get loaded? Where do they come in? And it looks like the static props. Remember this. So this is an older Next.js application using the pages directory, where we used to use this get static props method instead of the React server components and loading, within the React component itself. So we have this await call to the Supabase table, where we are only selecting videos that have the same event ID as the event ID that is specified within our environment variable. And we're ordering it as the most recent should show up first. So this is where we are getting those videos from. Now, I want to say that maybe we should ditch the idea of Supabase entirely. Supabase is a great product, but one of the benefits and one of the areas for Laravel that is so interesting to me is the fact that you kind of get all this stuff in the same package without having to go and piece together your own solution. So I'm kind of thinking maybe we should take a look at our schema for the Supabase entry and let's just scrap it and try to get it rebuilt in the Laravel way, which might be using a Laravel local database. Maybe that's a SQLite database or MySQL or Postgres or something like that, where we can kind of do it the Laravel way rather than relying on a third-party app. So let's see what we can figure out with that. All right, I'm back over here in the Laravel documentation, and there is a whole database entry under the docs, which is good to see here. Now, I don't know, what are they recommending as the database to use? Let's see, we're configured within the config database PHP configuration file. Laravel automatically create a SQLite file and run the database migrations for you. So we probably already have a database set up. I didn't even think about it yet, but it probably is there in place. So maybe there's an easy way to get our required structure or schema from our Supabase database over to our Laravel database, our Laravel structure. Now, over here in Supabase, we can kind of get this overall high-level view of what our database for this application looks like. We have 5 different tables. One of them is storing each individual entry for the guestbook. One of them stores information related to the assets or the videos that are recorded. This is a leads table, which is if somebody decides to enter their email address for receiving a MUX credit, they would be entered into this table here. And the activity, and I think this is when something new happens from the MUX webhook notification. And so we'll kind of want to recreate this whole database within our Laravel application. So I wonder if there's an easy way to get this out. Maybe I can run like a SQL command or something to get this table out. All right, this isn't exactly what I was looking for, but we're moving fast here, so let's just keep rocking with it. We have now this table printed of the schema. It's not the actual schema, but I'm pretty sure that if I were to copy this thing, I could probably pipe this into Cursor and get the actual migration set up as we need to. Let's find out. So in Laravel, anytime that we want to create a new database table, we want to create a migration. And a migration allows you to control the shape of the tables and what they look like and kind of control them. So if you make a change that you didn't mean to apply, or maybe it needed to be rolled back, you can do that with migrations. You can also kind of see the evolution of your data structure through a migration. So let's go ahead and create our first migration. And it says, we'll run this command here, PHP artisan make migration. And I think I'm going to go back to our MUX guestbook. And this artisan, I believe, is kind of a helper, kind of like a CLI tool within Laravel that will allow you to interact with the Laravel framework in an easy way. So we're going to use it to go ahead and create the migration for our new tables. So I'll hit PHP artisan make migration, and we can give the migration a name. So we'll say create guestbook tables. And we have a new migration file that's been generated here. Now, I'll take a look at the contents of this migration file, and we can see that it kind of assumed, based off of the way that we named this migration, what the table name should be. And I think it can also make some smart assumptions about what columns should be within that table, but it didn't do any of that here. We have a new table, guestbook tables, and it's just got ID and timestamps. That's not what we want, right? We have this existing layout over here for the tables that we want, including all of the information. So I'm just going to copy this as JSON. And this is where I start to rely on AI to just solve some of the mundane for me. If I were to edit this, paste in my existing JSON here and say, write the migration required for this schema. Let's see how it does. I mean, that looks pretty good to me. So we'll go through and double check all this, but man, this AI stuff is great for old lazy people like me. So, I mean, it's pretty amazing, but this does look like it just kind of one-shots the migration that we need to run here. So I'm just going to hit save here and go back to our documentation and just make sure I know how to run this migration. Simple enough. So anytime we want to make a change to this database, we want to run PHP artisan migrate. So we'll go ahead and do that here. And it looks like it completed successfully. So now we have our database in place that's ready to start accepting some entries. Pretty cool. Okay, so now that we have our database migrations run, we need a way to interact with that database. And in the previous application, we were just using Supabase helpers to basically kind of interact with the database using the Supabase client. On the load, we're going to get the backlog of videos by kind of writing this pseudo database code or ORM type code that just allows us to select all of the entries with a specific event ID. And if we're going to do that in Laravel, we need to do so using the Laravel ORM. And that is all documented right over here under this Eloquent ORM. So it's a nice way to kind of interact with the records that are included in your database while still allowing validation and type safety and those sorts of things. So we're going to go ahead and make sure that we have a model in place to kind of do the same thing we were doing over here, which is selecting data from the entries that exist in our Supabase database. And then this looks like it was like massaging it into the shape that we wanted it to look like for the application, getting rid of any pending videos, and then using those as the initial videos for this application. I'm going to see if I can kind of simplify this a little bit with the Laravel approach. So to begin, we need to go ahead and create an entry model for our application here. So I'll go to the command line, run PHP artisan make a model, and it's going to be call it an entry for the guestbook. And we have a new file that's been created. App models entry has been created successfully. So I'll go over and we'll see here's the new file. Not doing too much just yet, but we can update this here so that we can now interact with the entries table in our database. So what do we need to do? Well, again, I probably could read this documentation and get a really good understanding of what the conventions are here, how you can specify the table name that it interacts with, primary keys, and so forth. But I bet AI could probably shortcut a lot of that for us. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab my entries schema here, hit copy, and I'm going to go over to my entry model, select all, use this Command K and cursor, and just put the schema right in here. And I'll say, update let's say the entry model so that I can use these fields to retrieve and validate the underlying entry data, something like that. And let's just see what it comes up with here. See, it's really not too complicated of code, but I'm just going to assume this is correct first. And then let's go ahead and take a look at what we saw: fillable and casts and attributes. Okay, so I'm going to do first, just take a look at fillable and see if we can get a definition of what it means to be fillable. Mass assignment. So when we are creating new records, we want to specify whether that particular property on the record can be mass assigned. So it looks like this is to prevent some vulnerabilities by default. And by kind of adding this to some kind of allow list, it will enable us to be able to fill these out within the model. So that's what fillable is looking like it's good for. Casts and attributes. So casts, I'm assuming here, is going to ensure that the data type that coming out of this database record is going to match what we expect. And then attributes, I don't know what that is. Let's see. Attributes. Here we go. If you would like to define the default values for some of your model's attributes, you can define attributes property, and it will just be the default values when this record is displayed, when it's stored or when it's read. It looks like that would be the values. So I'm going to assume this all looks good for what we need for our application until I might need something different, but it seems pretty straightforward as to what this is going to do. So now I need some way to get the records from my database, which there are none right now, but that method of accessing the underlying records and putting them into the Inertia page load so that when the client page is rendered, we can have access to all of the records that we're trying to retrieve, right? So how do we do that? I was just doing some light reading on the Inertia.js website about sharing data and how we can load data in the request response, how we return all of that. And I think one of the interesting approaches here is going to be using, well, first I'm going to bring up the web.php routes file. And it's going to be using deferred props. And we'll talk about what that looks like it is. But this here is how we are rendering the homepage, right? We have this Inertia render welcome, and it's not currently passing any props down. However, if we go to the welcome page, we do have this use page call, and it says that there's props somewhere, and then it's calling this auth or destructuring this auth in place. Where's that coming from? So just kind of clicking around here and seeing what we could find. There was somewhere in here that there was some middleware that has this share method. Look at this. And so in share, these are props that are shared by, looks like the whole application. So on every page load, this share method is called, and anything that you define within the share method will be passed down to the actual application. So it's kind of cool, a neat way to be able to share the props between the entire application. We won't be using this just yet, though. I'm going to close out of that and go back to where we have our route defined here. And I want to basically add an additional prop that is going to have all of the entries in our guestbook and share that with our welcome page, our home page. But I want to do it in a way that doesn't really introduce a performance hit in any way. Now this application, let's just take a look at this again. When I reload, this is loading pretty quick here because this is being retrieved on the server side. But I don't actually absolutely need these guestbook entries as part of the initial page load. I could probably get a good sense of what this page is doing without this data down here and load this in a way that will kind of defer its loading or give it to me later, basically. So it'll still render the page up here. And as soon as this data is ready and loaded from the database, it could introduce it down here. And that's kind of what I'm seeing over here on this deferred props page. So if we want to have deferred props in place, that is data that we're going to fetch that could potentially take a little longer than just the initial page load, we can retrieve it this way. So I want to add a deferred prop for our entries to the render call here. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to use my trusty cursor, Command K here, and I'm going to say add all entries as a deferred prop using the entry model. Okay, so we have app models entry, and it's calling Inertia lazy, and that's not what I'm seeing over here. I don't know what lazy is. Maybe that's from an old version of Inertia, but we're going to use this one. So I'm just going to update it so that it matches this particular shape here. Match this call. There we go. So that's looking a little more like I was going to expect. Okay, and over here on the client side, we're going to need to use that deferred prop. And this is what's going to kind of show our grid, right? So we'll want to copy this deferred helper. I'm going to go over to my welcome page and we'll introduce the deferred. Looks like we could really just add it up here, deferred. And it's going to be this grid that we're going to deferred. And it looks like it already kind of knows what I'm going for here. Deferred value is entry. And it looks like, again, maybe this is using like an outdated version of Inertia or something, but the recommendation for what I'm passing here doesn't look correct. So I'm going to say exactly what it is that we're looking for as the deferred prop, which is entries. There's a fallback component that we can have here. And then after those entries have been loaded, it will show this component, which we'll just say hello for now. So I'll hit save, go over here, back to our page, and you can kind of see it there for a minute that this is loading before this one is. And it's showing just this little loading flickering there and before it shows our hello. So deferred props looks like a really great way to kind of only load the data that you need at runtime when that page is loading. And then when the other data becomes available, then pass it down to the client application. Now, I want to get a record in our database so that we're working with some actual data here. At least one record that would be helpful to be working with. And this looks like the playback ID that we recorded at the beginning of the video, where it's just me in this studio waving. So let's go ahead and get this out of our Supabase table and into our SQLite table over in Laravel. So I have the data for the playback ID. I know the event ID. I'm just going to call the status as ready, and it's 16 by 9. So the only thing I really need to copy here is this playback ID. So I'm just going to copy it. And let's find out how, maybe we can even just kind of look at the artisan commands here to see if there's an easy way to interact with adding a record to a table. This I don't know, but let's find out. Start a new database CLI session. That looks pretty interesting right there. So let's go ahead and do that with PHP artisan DB. Okay, so we're dropped right into this SQLite command, which I don't know how to write any SQLite, but guess who does? So we'll go here and bring up our chat. This is the cursor chat for all the knowledge that you could ever want. So I'm just going to say, hey, write me a SQLite command for inserting a record into the entries table and use the playback ID of, and here's the playback ID value. Okay, so let's see what it comes back with here. Playback ID created at. The other fields are optional, will be null by default. The ID is auto-incrementing. Okay, so this looks good. I'm just going to copy it and make a quick edit to it here. So insert into entries, playback ID created at current timestamp. That's fine. But I am going to say the status, and I'm just going to mark the status as ready. It knew exactly what I wanted to do. So we are more closely mimicking what the actual record looks like here. I also want the aspect ratio, right? And the event ID, let's not forget that too. So we'll say aspect ratio is 16 by 9. That's right. And the event ID is, and we're going to use our dev event ID of 2468. So this should do what we want it to do. Let's go ahead and paste it in, paste, send it. And now let's just say select all from entries. Man, I haven't written that in a long time. So look, we have a new record that is in our database in the entries table, and it looks exactly like we wanted it to. So if I were to go back to our Laravel application, and instead of having hello there, let's just see what we would need to do to interact with the actual data. Bring up the welcome and potentially use entries right here within the use page props. And let's just see if we can get this information here. We'll ignore the TypeScript errors. And look, there's our playback ID. So we do have the interaction with the database actually working as we'd expect here. And that's looks like the whole flow. So we'll have data in the database. We'll load it within the Inertia area during the loading of the page. And then we can defer the loading as well and show them once they're all loaded. So that's going to be the approach we're going to take. For now, I need a jet and move on to another task. But I'm going to continue this video where I left off, and we'll keep on chugging through and learning along the way of how to migrate your Next.js application over to Laravel.